right, hello everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of A Sip of Knowledge, special holiday edition. Should I say that since you have the hat on, Marty?
It's a holiday edition.
So as always, we're here with Marty, Duffy, Liz Rhoades, and Lou Bryson, plus this week's special guest, Stephen Gould from Golden Moon Distillery, who I will let your hosts give a more formal introduction to in just a moment. Real quick, before we get started, I'm Will Hookinga from Zavvy.co. Just want to point out a couple of ways you can interact with your hosts and their guests throughout the live stream today. So to your right, you'll see a chat. Feel free to say hello. Let us know where in the world you're joining us from. At the bottom of the screen, there's a button that says Ask a Question. So if you have questions at any point for Stephen or any of these three folks hosting the show, just type it in down there and hit submit. I'll be keeping an eye on those and relaying them to our hosts over here. And last but not least, feel free to share the event with your friends. Invite them to join us. There's a button at the top that makes that easy. But with all that said, Marty, Liz, Lou, I will turn things over to you now.
Thank you, Will. I know that you've always, you hated being an elf and you've always wanted to be a dentist, which is always great. Hi, my name is Martin Duffy. I am a former senior master of whiskey, not a junior, senior master of whiskey, for 14 years. Spent 8 years as the co-producer of the Chicago Independent Spirit Expo, 18 glorious months as the national brand ambassador for Benedictine and B&B. Woohoo! Christmas time is here. And for the last, 6.5, since 2014, seems longer.
Wow.
Am I adding that up right?
Yeah, it's that 2020 thing.
Yeah, it's a time warp thing, yeah.
I didn't have any gray in my hair when I first started. I've been the North American brand representative for Glencairn Crystal, the one, the only. Lizard, yeah, see, everyone has them. Everyone has them, people. Lizard.
Hey, everyone, thanks for joining. I'm Liz Rhoades, technical distiller and spirit consultant. Have just over a decade of experience in alcoholic beverage, spanning across a couple different products, beer, rum, vodka, but my particular favorite and specialty is in the whiskey. I spent most of my career at Diageo, but now am currently founder and principal at Spirit Safe Consulting. And if you scroll down about the host section, there's a little link to my website. So check it out. Over to Lou.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you. I'm Lou Bryson. I'm a whiskey and beer writer, former managing editor of Whiskey Advocate magazine for 20 years, and back out on my own. My latest book, Whiskey Masterclass, which you still can get for Christmas if you get the Kindle edition and download it. Marty has my other book, Tasting Whiskey, still a classic. Yes, indeed. Currently a senior drinks writer for the Daily Beast website, and today I am drinking the Feathery, a very nice blended malt whiskey, nice and sherryful. Enjoying that quite a bit. Marty, back to you.
Thanks, Lou. I noticed in your book, George Bailey doesn't jump off the bridge. He's saved by an angel. I won't give away the ending, but
no spoilers.
How far I've gotten so far. By the way, I'm drinking some of John McKee's Kelly whiskey from Headframe up in Montana to celebrate. Something we're going to be talking about today is some of the legislation that has been passed today. Just the man to talk. Well, no, we're here. That guy. Just the man to talk about it is he's the owner of Golden Moon Distillery in Gould in Colorado.
Co-owner. My wife owns it with me.
The co-owner. Sorry. Probably junior.
Can't leave Karen out. This wouldn't be here. We're not for her partnership with me in this business.
He's been co-owner since 2008, and has had but been distilling since the early 90s. He's a member of the craft DISCUS board, the ACSA, the American Craft Spirits Association, and the Colorado Distilling Board. So he is the man, and look, even my cat's excited about it. Had to come here. You said,
"What? Steven's on? Like, I gotta check this out."
I said, "Wait a minute! Did you say Golden Moon? That's my favorite." So he's always talking about Stephen, or she is. Sorry, gender bender. All right. So yes, to just cut to the chase, Stephen Gould, everybody.
Never too late.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yes, this is great. Stephen, I've been out to your wonderful facility, and you got one of the best backdrops in the world. You have the Rocky Mountains, basically.
We're in the foothills of the Rockies in Golden, Colorado. Right out the front door of the distillery, you can see Lookout Mountain, Mount Zion, and the entire Front Range, sort of 50 meters, 100 meters from us. You know, you can look straight up and see where Buffalo Bill is buried.
You took me there.
I got to see there. Which is right, you know, overlooking Golden, overlooking the distillery. We're in the Wild West, and you know, this is largely considered beer country, though Colorado whiskey is growing in stature, thanks to the efforts of a whole bunch of us here in Colorado. We have well over 110 distilleries now in the state of Colorado, making all manner of different products. And using all manner of different types of production methods.
So, Stephen, since your experience goes back nearly 30 years, Jesus Christ. Sorry, you meant cheese and crackers. I shouldn't be using his name in vain this week. Anyways, give us kind of a brief overview. How'd you start from way back in the early 90s to being the Goliath, the giant, the man that, you know, people can't even go to the Rockies without stopping off at your distillery first.
I wish all of that were true. I got fascinated with alcohol beverage at a very young age. Started working in bars and restaurants as a dishwasher when I was 13. Whoa. And you know, my family always had beer, wine on the table, and I was always allowed a little sip. And, you know, I've always viewed it as cuisine, if you will. I started home brewing, when I was probably 18 years old. So before it was legal. I was in the Marine Corps as well during that time. One thing led to another, and when I was in graduate school, I and a couple of friends started a small brewery, and I did my first distilling, made some really, really, really horrific single malt. No clue what I was doing at the time, but learned a lot about it, and that's sort of where I started this journey. When I got out of graduate school, I was going to open my own distillery. And a gentleman by the name of Fritz Maytag, who kind of a giant in the brewing and distilling world in America, used to give a lot of free advice. And he sat me down very generously and listened to what I was planning on doing and told me to wait 5 to 10 years, told me to, you know, I've got an MBA, that I should go out, get a real job, learn how to run a business, learn business. And if I still wanted to do, you know, to be a distiller, to come back to it. So I went off to Ford Motor Company and spent the better part of a decade working in various countries around the world as a supply chain guy for Ford, but never lost the taste for it, and kept visiting distilleries, studying, reading. Actually started a sideline business, brokering brewery overstocks out of breweries in Michigan into China while I was working for Ford in China. And then because I was also doing stuff in India, I got to know the folks at Allied Domecq India and started using their extra capacity to ship blended Scotch whiskey that was distilled in Scotland, bottled in India. And then I pushed that into China for a little bit as well. Remember the old brand Long John? Long John Scotch?
No.
So that was it's a Diageo product. It's still floating around there now. But they were bringing it in tanks into India and bottling it. And the Indian operation needed a way to relieve export credits. And my area of expertise was international trade and customs, those sorts of things. That's what I did for Ford. And literally over drinks one night, their managing director was like, "Can you give me some advice?" And I was already selling beer into China from what was then Stroh's. And so Detroit again, connection, right? And actually a couple of their executives were in the Marine Corps Reserve with me. So it's all about networking. And so I already had the supply chain into China, and I started pushing whiskey through it. And I did that for about a year. And then Ballantine, Japan, which was the Allied domestic operation in Japan, put a stop to it because China was under their territory, if you will. So I made a little money shipping some whiskey around the world back then, and sort of kept my hand in. And about that time, I discovered absinthe. And it gets better. I went way down the rabbit hole.
I thought you were going to say heroin. I'm so glad you said absinthe.
I went way down the rabbit hole, started spending some time with distillers in France and Switzerland, became a member of the absinthe community, if you will. And in those days, there was a very large underground community of absinthe aficionados around the world that lovingly called themselves HGers. And many of them are now brand owners today. We all had pseudonyms, and even as recently as last week, I was talking to somebody in the booze world that I knew from back then. And he's like, "Well, you weren't around then." And I told him what my pseudonym was. He goes, "Oh my God, that's you?" And I'm like, "Yeah."
Which is?
HGer.
So when I went down the rabbit hole of absinthe, I really developed a solid skill set due to the kindness of a lot of really talented distillers that were willing to share their skills with me over the years. And that led me to open in 2008 what is now Golden Moon, to make a very small quantity of premium absinthe, and it was going to be a hobby business. And then because I've always, not only do I collect, you mentioned I collect old stills, I also collect rare books on distilling, and I collect old booze. And in my travels, I stumbled across a large pre-prohibition cache of spirits known as the Hannesville cache. And in that was 5 gallons of gin. And so I tasted this gin.
Was that in one big carboy?
It was in one big carboy, exactly. So there were a dozen carboys in the original cache. In fact, all the empty carboys are still in my garage. Well, and that's a good point. They're not all empty. I will be releasing through Whiskey Exchange about 40 bottles of pre-prohibition bourbon here this spring.
Whoa!
I remember you talking about that a couple of years
ago.
So
back to the journey. I tasted this gin, and I never really considered myself at that point a gin person, but it was an amazing gin. It was like nothing I'd ever tasted, and it got me interested in gin. And so I started digging into my old books, and found that medicinal gins in particular, in the 17 and 1800s, their formulas look suspiciously like absinthe formulas without wormwood, but with juniper. And so I already had all the ingredients except juniper. And lo and behold, juniper is easy to come by, especially in Colorado where it grows everywhere. And so I started screwing around and prototyping, and this was the first really big commercial product that Golden Moon came out with.
Golden Moon Gin.
And
where's that available, Stephen?
So we are available with all our products in 17 states. You can go on websites like Flaviar, Caskers, Drizzly, etc., and you can find our products. We are available through Master of Malt in the UK. We will be available soon through Whiskey Exchange as well in the UK. We are available in Germany through Mike's Whiskey Handle in Munich. We are available nationwide in Italy and Denmark. We're in limited availability only for our single malts as of next month in Norway. Oh, I'm sorry. I left a country out. We're available in Taiwan.
Oh, cool.
Good, I remember that.
Before we get too far away, Steve Bayshore wanted to ask more about the stash of old booze. Can we get more on the history?
Yeah.
Oh, Steve, how are you? It's good. It's good to see your name on the text, Steve. So Steve and I are casual acquaintances. He's been promising to have me out to Mount Vernon for I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years now, and I want to spend more time in their library. I'm actually more intrigued about the library than I'd love to do some distilling on their old stills at some point. But he wanted to know more about old booze. God, that's a tough one.
Well, that stash you have.
Yeah,
so,
the one you.
So the Hannisville cache was purchased by a former diplomat. I don't have the name in front of me. And it was purchased because he believed Prohibition was coming. It was purchased at the end of the 19th century. He saw the writing on the wall, if you will, with the global temperance movement. And so he bought, family lore says, somewhere between 30 and 40 carboys of various spirits. And one of his great-great-grandson actually sold me the first tranche, if you will, that left the family, to my knowledge, to his knowledge. And most of that we packaged up and sold in Europe. It was rye whiskey that was reportedly laid down in 1863. You can Google Hannisville rye or Hannisville cache, and that will come up. Unfortunately, the bulk of that is now gone. I have a few hundred milliliters in my collection. Several of my friends have bottles, but most of that disappeared. Subsequently, another member of the family sold, I believe it was a single carboy, it might have been more, through one of the big auction houses. And one carboy ended up in Singapore, where a bar in Singapore packaged it again in small bottles. And that was rye whiskey as well, and sold it. And the bourbon, plus I've got a little blending wine that it's sort of a sherry-like substance that was used for blending in carboys. It really isn't worth anything, but it's old, and I can't get myself to throw it out.
Are you thinking about distilling it?
No, I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it. I may blend it out and do some sort of limited release because it was used for blending at the distillery, and do some sort of blend with this pre-prohibition sherry-ish material, and either a single malt or a bourbon or a rye. So I'm still sitting on 3 carboys of bourbon. And we just finished up doing radiocarbon dating. We actually had 2 different labs date it, just because there's so many fraudulent ancient spirits out there. So we had the Paleo Institute here in Golden, which is affiliated with the Nuclear Accelerator at the University of California, Irvine, do a radiocarbon dating on it. And then we had the University of Glasgow in Scotland do a separate radiocarbon dating. And what's fascinating is the Scottish came back, and even though the material clearly is a bourbon, this guy that we're talking about now, most of the Hannisville cache was rye that's been sold. This is clearly a bourbon. It tastes like a bourbon. It smells like a bourbon. But the Scottish came back and said, we don't think it's a bourbon. We think it's a rye because of the presence of certain chemical components that are only found in rye as a grain. And I kind of chuckled when I read that, because pre-prohibition, the majority of whiskey made in the U.S. was rye whiskey. And so what you would have seen with a bourbon very likely would have been it would have been a high rye content bourbon.
Yeah.
And so that would explain the presence of those trace chemicals.
They have a new device. It was just announced in an article yesterday. There's a new device now to check the age of whiskey to verify it. I mean, it's like a simple device. I don't know if it's available to the general public, but it's now available to the industry.
Would have been nice to know before I spent a lot of money to do radiocarbon dating.
Steve, by the way, says hold on to some of that whiskey. He's going to be right over. Just
Steve, you're welcome to
on
come
over.
to Golden anytime you want.
2,500 miles, Steve. That's all you have to do.
So outside of the analytical components, there was no history or supplemental information that could be dug out with some of those.
No, we know exactly who bought it. Very interesting gentleman. Hang on, let me pull up his info.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
I'll
I just
tell
meant
you-
from like a mash bill or more, technical information.
No, unfortunately, there's not. I mean, this was squirreled away, and it's like because in the original cache there was also some what appeared to be straight corn whiskey that was lightly aged, and then there was some blending stock that was over oaked, very very oaky, clearly blending components. No idea what the real story is about how this guy got it out of the distillery, but it's pretty clear he bought it off the shipping dock at the Hannesville Distillery in Martinsville, West Virginia.
See, it's fun. Do you do? Now I noticed too. Is it David Bunty? Said he went to a training session. I guess that's Colorado Brewers Guild.
Distillers.
He says
Colorado Distiller. So COBG would be Colorado Bartenders Guild.
Oh, bartenders.
So I'm a member of the Colorado Bartenders Guild as well, and I'm a supporter. It's a great organization.
Sure.
It's part of the United States Bartenders Guild. And I used to do regular training sessions with them. We're actually in 2021. We're going to start doing virtual sessions for trade, both distillers and bartenders.
Well, he said it was awesome, but which also leads me to think, why don't you go teach classes? You have all this info and all this material.
So I've taught classes for a variety of organizations, the American Distilling Institute.
Yeah, but I'm thinking, like a university. I know Purdue.
I have
lectured.
I've lectured for several years at Colorado School of Mine.
They have a whole semester long class on spirits, and I think what you're, the knowledge you have and all that material. I mean, I think that would.
And all the time he obviously has,
No time.
Yeah, the guy doesn't sleep. Obviously, look at all this.
Hey, I run a distillery. I'm a consulting master distiller for another distillery. I do a ton of legislative work.
He hangs out with us.
Hanging out with you guys, yeah.
Well, now you're also something I want to get to because I'm a little conscious of time. The stills.
Yeah,
you're a crazy still collector.
Yeah, I am a crazy still collector. Right now, here at Golden Moon, we have 15 stills.
Liz, get over there.
Oh my God, I thought you had 5. Holy
Liz has dreams where there's.
I have 5 production stills in operation.
But 15 in total, just 5 in operation.
5 in operation. The rest are in various stages of retrofit. We'll have 15 operational stills when we're done building out this plant.
Wow.
What's your oldest?
The oldest is from the 1880s, and it's a French-designed copper pot that was built in Luxembourg, and I actually bought it from a distillery in the town it was built in.
Wow.
Crazy.
Very tiny still, about 100-liter still, water-jacketed still that was used to make Mirabelle, which is a brandy made from the yellow Mirabelle plum, which looks like a big cherry.
Look at that.
Now, is it your goal to use
Absolutely
all these stills into?
Absolutely.
That's going to be one. You gotta need a bigger distillery.
No, there's the current footprint is designed to hold the 15 stills.
And what's the volume between
the smallest stills we have are 100-liter.
Okay.
I have a DeRoy Simplex from the 1930s that we run almost every day, which is 105-liter still. We use that to make our Applejack and our Grappa currently. We will be building a custom-built still that is a scale-up of that still to do larger-scale brandy production at some point. But really, that's not our emphasis. We have a handful of 140 to 150-liter German stills that we call Black Forest stills. They're basically a pot with a simple reflux condenser to one side, which has a return and then a vapor line going into a condenser. I love those stills. Use them all the time. They're sort of the great grandfather of most of the German stills you see today.
Yeah.
I mean, in fact, the brand that I have, I own 4 stills made by Friedrich Kleinschmidt of Shingen, and that company was bought out by one of the Carl brothers at one point. And so, if you look at the kettle design and you look at some of the more modern Christian Carl stills, you'll see that there's a heck of a lot of similarity.
Huh.
So it's really the great grandfather of a lot of these German craft stills.
That's cool.
Then we have, I actually have 2 Jacob Carl stills from the 1970s, one from the 70s, one from the early 80s, that are hybrid stills.
Okay.
We'll bring those online to make rum industrial, so blackstrap rum. And the only reason we're going to make rum is to reutilize the cooperage that we're buying. I mean, we're buying a lot of barrels, and we can use used whiskey barrels to age out rum, and then we haven't decided if we'll release it or if we'll just sell it in bulk on the secondary market. But the other side issue is we have a beautiful little cocktail lounge called Golden Moon Speakeasy, and I'm very much looking forward to having my own tiki cocktail program in my own speakeasy. Just saying. So then I've got a gaggle of these German Black Forest style stills. I have 1, soon to be 2 500-gallon copper style pots that were built for us by Specific Mechanical. They're basically the same pots that Rob Castle designed for Connaught and New Liberty, except I've changed the configuration of the boil ball a little bit, and I've increased the size of the sump to a 4-inch sump so that I can put large quantities of solids in and be able to easily get them out if I want to. And then I've got a weird custom built still that I designed, and that my former consulting partner, the late great David Pickrell, unscrewed, for lack of a better term. So I designed this still. He looked at it and he kind of looked at me before he had it built, and he goes, "Your math's wrong." I went, "What?" He goes, "Your math's wrong." I said, "What do I do?" He said, "You used the wrong formula to scale up the volume of your reflux condenser." And he literally pulled out a pencil, grabbed a piece of paper, longhand, ran the calculation, and said, this is the number you should have. And this is the dimensions it should be. And we built it, and it works beautifully. So that still is a scale up of one of the small Black Forest stills that we prototyped everything on. And that has allowed us, it's a 1,000-liter still, and that has allowed us to take and transition a lot of our botanical products from the small still directly to the large still without having to reformulize. Most people don't realize is when you change stills, you change product flavor profile, because every still is unique and different. And
so that was something I want to ask you when you were talking about the still you got out of Luxembourg. And is the spirit also called Mirabelle, or is it called something different?
It's called Mirabelle.
Okay. In fact, so are there? I mean, I know there are, but I want to get more into it. The stills that are specifically made to make specific spirits, and then don't really work that well for other things.
Absolutely, it's a great question. One of the things that frustrates me to no end is new distillers tend to go out and buy the biggest, fanciest still they can find, and then figure out what they want to make. What they really should be doing is figuring out what they want to make, and then buying a still that will allow them to make that product effectively. And what I probably get a phone call a month from people wanting to make gin or absinthe with a still that has no way to get the solids out of it because the sump is this big, and or that has electric heating elements or something in it, which means you can't put solids in the still. So it's really, really crucially important for all of you people thinking about coming into this business and building a distillery to plan ahead, figure out what you want to make, and then figure out what kind of a still will allow you to do that well. Now, if you're like me, I ended up buying stills and then figuring things out. So do as I say, not as I do. but a lot of us started that way. I mean, my neighbor up in Salida, P.T. Wood, the mayor of Salida and founder of Woods High Mountain Distillery, inherited an old still from, I believe, his great uncle, if I'm not mistaken, an old German still, and then went to Vendome and had them make some modifications. And he makes great products on that still. But he also had to figure out how to live with what he had. So,
right. Well, that makes sense too. If you go over to, I mean, there's a reason why if you go over to Cognac or Armagnac, they use the stills they do, and a lot of great gin distilleries over in Europe that have been around for a long time. You see what they use, and it is very specific.
Well, and you can make whiskey off of any of those stills. You can make botanical spirits off any of those stills. Some are just better suited than others.
Yeah.
Liz, I'm sorry, Stephen. I just want to ask Liz something, because Liz was stationed like you were in the military down in.
It was Diageo.
Yeah, it was Diageo.
I was stationed. It's appropriate.
You had to get up at 5 o'clock every morning, do roll call, and then drink
Calisthenics. Sure.
When you were in Plainfield, they had the gin distilleries. They had the gin distilleries for Gordon's, and those were old Scottish stills that they had. The old what's the name?
Still?
Well, the brand. Foresight.
Foresight stills. Okay.
Yeah. And was that? Did they make any modifications? Were those originally whiskey stills?
I don't know the answer to that.
Well, I'm asking Liz.
Oh, sorry, Liz.
Ooh.
That was her.
Those weren't there by the time I started. So.
Really? They took those away that soon? Oh, okay. All right, Stephen. Do you know then? Forget it.
Well,
I'm useless in this conversation. Continue, Stephen.
So you see that style of still is exactly what Beefeater is producing on to this day. And if you go to the Beefeater distillery, you see pot stills that look just like a Scottish whiskey pot without a boil ball. So a straight neck pot.
Yep.
And that's what Beefeater produces on. Now, if you go in the second gallery, which typically isn't open to the public, there's also a bunch of Carterhead stills at Beefeaters. But those Carterhead stills were actually used because it used to be against the law in the UK for a gin producer to make their own alcohol. So they would buy neutral spirit, and the quality of the spirit was so low that they had the Carterhead stills to clean up the spirit before they would produce with them. But to my knowledge, at least as recently as maybe 5 years ago when I was there visiting Desmond, who's their master distiller, Des said that he didn't think those stills had been run since the 70s. They're all maintained.
Oh.
I mean, it's Pernod Ricard. They're not going to let a piece of equipment sitting not be well maintained. But, or they're going to take it out. They're going to do one or two things. It's either going to be usable or they're going to scrap it.
Yeah.
But
to follow up, Marty, they actually recently resurrected one of those, and it's in Canada now.
Oh, really? At Crown Royal?
One of the sites.
Oh, wow. Well, I heard they put them in storage. I thought they'd send them down to Kentucky.
Well, Marty, the other thing is, if you ever get the chance to go to Middleton in Ireland.
Yeah, been there.
Their prototyping facility on site there, their gin still is actually an old whiskey pot, small one.
Mm.
Yeah, it's. I've been to also, Liz. I don't know if you've been to Diageo's facility, Cameron Bridge, in Scotland. That's where they make Tanqueray, and that's really impressive. It's just really.
I'd like to go, but they don't offer tours of that to the writers. They don't want you to go and see that one.
Really? They're very open. Of course, this was during the time of Tom Nicol. Tom Nicol was the.
Well, and you were a senior master.
It
was. There was many doors open.
Not a junior, a senior.
Shut everybody.
So, Stephen, how do you come across these? How do you procure or find these kind of historic stills?
I'm always looking. I found them in strange places. The Black Forest still that we prototype pretty much everything here at Golden Moon on was in a hotel in Germany.
Oh,
and
wow.
it had been used as a still in that building, small still, making predominantly schnapps with stone fruit.
Mm.
And it had not been, it'd been derelict since the 1970s. And one thing led to another, and the guy decided to sell it. And he said, but you cannot use it. It's not safe to use. I brought it in. I cleaned it up. I changed a few gaskets. I put a new vacuum breaker and pressure relief valve on it.
Yeah.
Both a manual and an automatic, a couple of new gauges, and fired her up.
You sound like a teenager who took an old broken down car.
I used to do a lot of renting on cars and motorcycles.
With new tires and a new gauge.
Yep.
Baby's running good as new.
You know, I'm not a welder, so I wish I was. I'd love to be able to weld copper. I mean, my friend Chip Tate is an amazing welder. And, you know, the stuff that guy can do with metal, I'm so jealous of that skill set. I mean, both distilleries that he started, he built his first stills himself.
Is he still making that still? The last time I saw...
I haven't talked to Chip in probably, since probably 6 months before the current crisis, so a year and a half. So I honestly don't know where he's at.
Yeah. He was posting pictures of the progress, but
I haven't seen him post in a while.
I know. I haven't either.
So
what about all your spirits? You have I ran into you, I think you were at the restaurant show here in Chicago a couple of years back in Colorado, which was great. The state of Colorado created a big booth for Colorado brands, and so there's a number of distilleries there. And you had a plethora of SKUs.
We do about 20 products right now here at Golden Moon. We actually own 3 brands. So anything that says Golden Moon is either distilled or redistilled here at Golden Moon. And when I say redistilled, we do buy in NGS and redistill with hand-processed herbs and botanicals, some of which we grow ourselves for our gin and our liqueurs. Our single malts are all grain to glass, so we're buying from a malt house just down the street from us. A little company called Golden Malting, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Molson Coors.
Is everything in Golden, Colorado, put Golden in front of it?
Do they have containers that small that you can use?
I got Golden Plumbing, where we sell golden toilets.
There's a lot of businesses with Golden in their name in this town. I'm just saying. But no, so we source our malted barley for our single malt right down the street. We have 3 single malts in the line. We have 2 gins we make on a regular basis here. We have 2 absinthes we make on a regular basis.
Are you making the gin grain glass as well?
No, the gin is NGS.
Okay.
And then we redistill. But some of those botanicals we're growing, some of those we're sourcing, working direct with farmers whenever we can. And there's even a little wildcrafted botanical in some of our products. It's local. We have a teaming agreement with a farm in Larchmere, Colorado, to grow some of our botanicals. Fruition Farms. That's a farm owned by James Beard Award-winning chef and restaurateur Alex Seidel. And so we grow a variety of herbs and botanicals with him down there, which is a great teaming relationship, great partnership. And then we also have a second line called Gunfighter American Whiskeys. There's now 7 whiskeys currently available in that line, or in one case will be available in a couple of months. We do a port finished bourbon, a port finished rye, a rum finished bourbon, a rum finished rye, a vermouth finished bourbon, and a vermouth finished rye in partnership with Del Professor Vermouth out of Italy. And then we do a 13-year-old hand selected cask release of Tennessee bourbon. And that's kind of a fun project. I did some consulting for some people, and in payment was allowed to select a bunch of casks, and that became Gunfighter 13. Damn. And then it's, we're not shy about what we do. We're, in some cases, I'm buying stuff and I'm honest about what I'm doing. And if I'm going to put it in a bottle, it's going to be a quality product. In some cases, I'm going grain to glass. For example, what I'm drinking right now is Golden Moon Triple. Golden Moon Triple is a triple distilled Irish style Colorado single malt, made from malt grown in Colorado, Idaho, and Wyoming, and malted less than 3 miles from me at Golden Malton. So it's as grain to glass as you're going to get.
And the
neat.
triple there, are you distilling in the same still, or are you doing?
I'm using 3 different stills.
3 different stills.
I'm using the 500 gallon, I'm using the 270, and then we finish on 140 liter still.
Damn.
So, yeah, it's. I mean, if we're gonna do it, we're gonna do things in a quality way, no matter whether it's an independently bottled spirit, a grain to glass, or fruit to glass spirit. And we do grappas and brandies here as well, Applejack.
How are you heating the stills? Are they all steam? Are they all direct fire? Are they a mix?
They're a mix of direct fire, water jacket, and steam.
Okay.
All the big stuff is steam. All the German Black Forest stills are all water jacket, Bain Marie, with a gas burner. And in most cases, I've gone in and put a commercial regulator on a natural gas line and then plumbed it into a wok burner. And it works perfectly.
Okay.
Hey, and it passes fire code too. So there.
Even better.
So, and then we do have, right now we only have 1 direct fire still. Again, it's a wok burner, but it goes straight to the bottom of a copper pot. And that's the Duroy Simplex, which is an old French still. The Simplex stills are really cool in that they were made for farmers, vintners, orchard owners to distill their own agricultural products and then throw them in the barn and forget about them for the rest of the year. So they have no gaskets. They use hydraulic joints. You fill a channel with water and that seals the system.
No kidding.
So it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Hey, Stephen, since we have you, and today was kind of the big day, like I mentioned earlier, you're a member of DISCUS, Craft Spirits Board, and with the Colorado Distillers Board, the ACSA, which is the American Craft Spirits Association. Why don't you talk about the big news today, which you've been working on for what? A good number of years yourself.
I've been working on this for about 15 years actively. There's been a whole lot of us. I want to emphasize that this is an industry victory. There's not one person or one organization that deserves more credit than anybody else.
Except for me.
The industry has together to get this done. And what that is we have made the Craft Beverage Modernization Act, or Modernization and Trade Act, which was granted on a temporary basis 2 years ago, was passed both the House and Senate last night as permanent and will be signed into law sometime in the next few days, we hope. So that's big news for the entire industry, and it's a victory for all the state guilds, for ACSA, for DISCUS, for ADI, for a whole bunch of other people that have been floating around the industry. There's been a whole lot of people for a very long time putting a lot of effort into this. And last night I was sitting having dinner and a cocktail with my wife, and normally we don't have cocktails with dinner, but we needed to celebrate. And I just kept looking in as the emails were coming in, giving updates, and people were texting me, and finally decided to shut everything off when the Senate passed it last night. So
it was like 10 to midnight, I think.
And we have a significant majority in both the House and the Senate. So God forbid it should be subject to a veto. I don't think it will. We have and it's part of the COVID relief bill. It was attached onto that. So I think it's veto proof, but they'll have to go back and revote if the president were to veto it.
Yeah, I think the Senate vote was like 97-3, something like that.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it was pretty high.
Yeah,
it's veto proof. There's really,
it was 6. Was it 6?
Was it 6?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't see him vetoing it. I mean, it's
well, I'm going to say this again. Everybody in our industry that worked on this, and there's hundreds and thousands of people that did, should feel very proud that we've done something good for our industry. And so everybody knows craft beer and craft wine got significant excise tax breaks during the Reagan administration. The reason craft distilling did not was because there wasn't a craft distilling industry in those days.
Yeah.
There is now. And so really our push has been, at least in my personal case for the last 15 years, has been a quest for something akin to parity with beer and wine. And correcting a historical wrong, if you will. U.S. law going all the way back to Hamilton and Jefferson has been structured with beer, wine, and cider being viewed as good and ardent spirits being viewed as bad. Modern science has shown that alcohol is alcohol is alcohol. It's neither good nor bad. And as a result, we're still trying to change the structure that originally was put in the first Whiskey Act by Hamilton way back before the first American Civil War, the Whiskey Rebellion.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can trace the law and the structure of the law from Hamilton's writings all the way to the modern liquor code and the way that excise tax is assessed.
Well, it's always been funny to me how, they've always pushed, everyone says, whiskey, that's bad for you because it'll make you drunk faster than what we have. And then you go to some bar in Lincoln Park and you see some guy downing 16 cans of Miller Lite.
Hey.
He's as shit-faced as anyone else.
Well, you actually still see certain people, even in government, that have a predisposition and will openly say that higher excise taxes on distilled spirits are sin taxes and deserve to be there.
Yeah.
Right. Well, but that goes to the whole...
And of course, we disagree with it.
Yeah, there's a lack of education about whiskey, what it is. Anytime you do a staff training, you find people think it's something scary and evil. No,
we can't sell it on a Sunday.
Yeah.
And there's still space to do that.
The thing that gets me, the hypocrisy really comes out with these the prepackaged stuff, like prepackaged cocktails or seltzers or any of that stuff, where the alcohol, the source of the alcohol doesn't really matter. It's the flavors you're putting in, but they still tax it differently if it comes from distilled or wine or beer. And I'm like, at this point, it's just ethanol. It doesn't matter how you're making it.
It's just ethanol, and it should be taxed the same way across all parties. I mean, we were able here in Colorado, as was mentioned, I handle government affairs for the Distillers of Colorado. And a few years ago, we were able to get Colorado to give us parity on licensure fees. And it was fascinating because the chair of the finance committee in the Colorado Senate said on the record that he was righting a historical wrong by supporting this. And I immediately said, all right, let's talk about state excise tax. And they immediately said, oh, no, there's a fiscal note on that. We can't touch it.
Hey, Stephen, talk about, I believe Colorado you guys have about 60 distilleries, or there's 60 distilleries on the trail?
We have 62, I think, on the last trail. We did not do a trail this year, even though it still exists, because obviously no one's doing that. It's COVID. But I think last year's map, 2019's map, had 62.
Was that 62 just on the trail, or what about the state?
The state, the last time I looked, counting distilleries and distiller pubs, which are both licensed federally as DSPs, so they're all distillers. I believe the current number is 112 total licenses. Wow.
So you guys have to be What was that?
I just got to look on their website and count.
You guys have to be in the top 5 of states of the largest.
I think we're number 5 right now.
Because I believe it's California, New York,
Oregon, Washington.
And you guys.
In that neighborhood, we've got over 100. I know that.
There's I think there's 10 states that have between 95 and 130.
Yeah.
I think California's got 124 the last I looked. That was pre-COVID. I may be wrong, and maybe a few more. But you have to remember with California as well that a lot of the commercial wineries have DSPs as well.
I think Oregon too.
So
Washington.
I talked to the to the chair or the president of the Congressional Wine Caucus, who's the gentleman from Napa. And I looked at him and I had to remind him years ago when we were talking 4 or 5 years ago now, asking for his support for federal excise tax reduction for us. I had to. He goes, well, I really, my district's a wine producing district, and I laughed and I said, here's a map of your district and here's the number of DSPs in your district. His district, that congressional district, has more DSPs than any other district in the country.
No kidding.
Because the wineries all have DSP.
Yeah, makes sense. They're going to make vermouth. They're going to make brandies.
Sure.
Yeah.
Or they're going to do alcohol recovery on bad wine and sell it as a secondary co-product.
Yeah.
And I mean, well, remember, what are the 2 largest brandy brands in the United States?
Christian Brothers.
Gallo?
Corbel.
E&J is the largest,
E&J.
which is Gallo.
Yeah.
And I believe number 2 is Corbel.
Corbel, yeah, I believe that.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
Which are and where's at least some of their production?
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's some not so small distilleries in California
Right.
that have been there for a very, very, very long time.
Those are your well, at least they were back in my day.
Well.
I have a book.
Christian Brothers isn't like the second. I thought Christian Brothers was huge. Go up to Corbel and Christian Brothers up in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Christian Brothers has got to be in the top 3 or 4 anyway.
It has to be top 3.
Well, it's funny because I've got a book in my collection that is an amazing book on distilling that was actually published by the California Department of Agriculture in like 1898. And it was focused mostly on brandy production.
See,
is brandy the next big thing?
American single malt's the next big thing.
See, we don't see that as a next thing because it's still whiskey. I'm looking for the next thing after whiskey.
Yeah.
I don't think there will be a next thing after whiskey.
God bless you. Yes.
I make brandy and I like brandy.
Yeah.
And I've got a lot of friends that are very talented brandy distillers. And I think whiskey is going to be around for a very long time. I mean, what was it? 3 years ago, whiskey as a category surpassed vodka for the first time in 50 years in the U.S.
Yeah,
and that's huge because that means people want to drink something with flavor versus something that is neutral.
You put flavor in, yeah.
Right, but I always chalked up the whole, especially in the 90s when I was bartending, people bought into the whole Sky Vodka is hangover free. You know, if I just drink vodka, I won't even get drunk really because it's not brown.
Well, I mean, the number. I was bartending in the '80s. I'm old. And the number of the number of weird ass shots that if you either wanted a vodka based drink or they wanted something with a foofy flavor.
Yeah.
Mentholatum schnapps, peppermint schnapps, peach schnapps, root beer schnapps. Remember that?
Yep.
Black Widow was Rumpelmeister and
Rumpelmans, yeah.
It was Rumpelmans and Jägermeister, or it was also known as a Rumpelmeister.
Oh my gosh,
Rumpelmeister.
Black
Widow was Jägermeister and Sambuca.
So we used
much
to have
sugar.
the snake bite, which is not the snake bite of today, and the snake bite was Yukon Jack. And Jägermeister, equal parts.
Yeah. I had a guy come into the bar once. I was just started bartending. This is 1990, and a guy asked for a Clint Eastwood. What's a Clint Eastwood? I know who Clint Eastwood is, but and then there was a shot, and he goes, "Yeah, it was Jack Daniels, Yukon Jack, and tequila."
Oh God!
Well,
Yukon Jack. I mean, those drinks amaze me. How much sugar you could shove into 100 proof liquor.
Yeah, if we're talking about hangovers, like.
Yeah.
Well, remember, those were the days when people did shots of Yukon, they did shots of Tawaka, and they did shots of Southern Comfort.
Yeah, your liver ended up looking like a big gumdrop. Just
rock candy.
Wrapped in sugar, little sugar.
I remember. So in the late '80s, I started working at a little cafe in Reno called Du Grenay. It's 2 big noses in French. And they had 30 single malts and grappas on a bar with 22 seats. And
What?
nobody ever heard of this. And Tim and John were like, we're going to do something different. And that's where I fell in love with whiskey and my first love in whiskey, Bunnahabhain 12.
Wow.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah. So, well, it's kind of interesting because now as I said, I'm a consulting master distiller on another project, and there's two of us. And the other consulting master distiller is Ian McMillan that used to run Bunnahabhain.
Oh, hey,
I'm working shoulder to shoulder with Ian, and
I
absolutely.
knew you back in the day.
synergy. Hey, actually, why don't we talk about that? So, since you just brought it up, I know you can't talk all
I can't talk a lot about it, but I can tell you it's an amazing project that is going to make amazing whiskey. It'll be by Irish standards a smaller distillery, but it'll be sizable. Forsyth is building the kit. We're in County Kildare. Ian McMillan and I are the co-master distillers on the project. And it's going to be a distiller like no one's ever seen before. It's going to be cool. We're 2.5 years in, and
Wow.
actually, I think they're longer, but I've been affiliated with them since June of 2.5 years ago. So yeah, almost exactly 2.5 years.
Is this privately financed, or have
Privately
you
financed.
rolled into bed with one of the big guys?
No, privately financed,
All right.
and I can't go into any more detail.
Okay.
You'll hear about it.
It is a whiskey production.
Say again.
It is a whiskey production.
It's a whiskey shop. Yes.
Okay. All right.
Okay. I just know that you just let Lou and Liz know. The two of them are like investigative reporters. The word is out now.
It's already leaked. If you Google what I said, you can probably figure it out. But I'm not giving you.
They probably leaked it.
Publicly. Yeah.
I've actually signed an NDA. So if you find it, good for you.
Actually, Stephen, I think one, you should invite Liz over to your distillery, and you guys could do classes. You have all these different stills to play with, and so you do distilling classes. You invite Lou over to write yet another book, because these books don't come fast enough as far as I'm concerned.
Well, and I got to tell you, I actually have I'm struggling to find enough time to write on my book projects.
Yeah.
Have Lou ghostwrite it.
Well, and it's funny because I actually write for a couple of magazines, or I have written for a couple of magazines. I'm still technically an associate editor at Artist and Spirit magazine.
Oh yeah.
Brian goes, "How busy are you? When am I going to see an article?" It's been like 3 years.
Yeah.
He called me regularly
Sounds
once,
about
twice
right.
a year, and says, "When do you have time to write something else?" And I'm like, "Time? Really?"
Oh, really? That must be
Really?
crazy. All that different stuff you got. You got all these plates spinning, man.
Well, I focus on the distillery and the legislative issues, and yeah, and really the primary focus right now is just surviving and keeping my staff employed through COVID.
Sweet.
Yeah.
And that's my priority is let us get through this. We have a light at the end of the tunnel. We've been fortunate in that we've only had to lay off. We had to lay off one salesperson, and it actually worked out well for her because her kids weren't going to school, and she was able to be home and take care of them. And it wasn't ideal, and we miss her, and we'll always consider her part of the family. And I don't think she'll come back. I think her life has changed so much, which kind of bums me out because she was really a part of the team. We've, Golden Moon Speakeasy, which is our tasting room, fairly highly regarded cocktail venue in the greater Denver area, named the top classic cocktail bar in Denver a couple years ago by Westward Magazine. We've been doing a lot of tap dancing real fast to keep that team busy so we can pay them.
Sure.
And find ways to earn revenue.
Well,
And it's a struggle, just not only for us, but for all distilleries, all breweries, and for that matter, the entire hospitality industry.
Yeah.
The number of restaurants and bars owned by friends of mine that I've seen close their doors in the last 6 months is tragic.
I know.
And we've been blessed that we've been able to make it through so far. We do not have big investors backing us here at Golden Moon. predominantly just Karen and myself. We do have a couple of friends and family investors, but it's minimal. And really, we're I like to say that we're very pleased to have a partner in Live Oak Bank, which has been working with us. The largest alcohol beverage lender in the United States, and they've been great to work with. And by the way, anybody looking for financing, call Tracy at Live Oak Bank. Seriously, knows the industry and is a friend of the industry. And
I remember an article, but not about Live Oak, but I think about 7 or 8 years ago, I wrote an article for a brewing magazine about how much easier it was to get capital than it was 10 years before that, because the bankers are actually seeing the products on the shelves and it's become real.
What we found, especially in distilling, and this is right at the start of COVID, and I was talking to a friend of mine who's founded a couple of different distilleries. Well, you know him. It's Rob Castle. Founded Philadelphia, currently running New Liberty, and is part owner of Connaught in Ireland. Yeah. Rob and I were both musing about how it's easier for someone to put a distillery on paper with no experience and a neat idea to raise funds in the modern market than it is once you've been in business for 5 years to raise funds. Because once you've been in business, people are going to dissect your financials and find every flaw they can find. But if you have no track record, they're going to say, "Ooh, that's a neat idea," and they're going to write you a check.
Right. You're either not big enough, or if you're just starting out, you have, as you say, no track record. But if you're not big enough, they're hesitant to invest.
Well, and we've gone through that here at Golden Moon. I mean, we took a very different path in that we developed, did an extended R&D period, developed the product we wanted to put out, then put them out with no marketing, no sales, and no PR for several years to see if they would sell. Sold everything we made, then took in a bunch of debt in the form of an SBA loan from Live Oak to build out the big distillery. And of course, 6 months after we built out the big distillery, COVID hit, which was bad timing. But like I said, our wholesale in Colorado, we've doubled this year. Our wholesale in New York is up 50%. Our revenue is down a little from last year, but we're outperforming the industry. But having said that, it's still a challenge, and because we've gotten so many accolades and we've cast a big shadow, a number of the big guys have looked at us, and the answer is always the same. We love what you're doing. Call us when you're 2 to 3 times the size. Is what it is. And, I'm not sure I want a big guy to come in or not. I see some advantages to a strategic partner, but it'd have to be the right strategic partner, and it'd be structured in the right way. And, we want to continue to grow the Golden Moon family. And, I'm not looking to exit this business anytime soon. I'm looking to grow this business, and I'm looking to grow this business substantially. And I will talk to anybody that can help me do that, because we got plans.
I'll see that. I'm going to send you a certified check for $500. So,
okay.
Yeah.
And I'm going to send you
a couple of bottles.
I'm going to send you 5 bottles of really good single malt.
Excellent.
So we had a number of comments actually from the audience, aka Steve Bayshore had some comments.
Steve Bayshore.
Okay, so earlier in the conversation, I knew this was at 1:22. So interesting. Thank you. Yes, please come in 2021. We can go through some records in the library.
Love that.
Sweet.
He
also said Dave was a math genius. So agreeing.
May rest in peace. He absolutely was.
You had a hello from Daphne Cuevas. Excuse me if I'm mispronouncing. All the way from Bordeaux, France.
Oh,
excellent.
Bordeaux, France. God bless you.
Secret Santa, no doubt.
Yeah, they'll know what Santa looks like about 6 hours before we do.
Okay.
8.
And
great. 8.
His comment was
Colorado.
also. Another comment from them was high taxes also hit small producers in America in the 18th century. Same in Scotland in that time period. Larger producers had advantages.
Yeah, that's actually interesting because so after the Whiskey Rebellion, the Whiskey Act was repealed and there was no tax on ardent spirits. During the Civil War, the North, the Union, reenacted a whiskey tax, a spirits tax, again structured in the same manner and same as it's structured today, based on proof gallon. And by the end of the Civil War, it was $2 a proof gallon, which is an exorbitant fee.
Wow.
At that point. And so what most people don't realize is that American moonshining really became a big thing during and immediately after the Civil War because the taxes were so high. It's not something that was unique to Prohibition. There were already significant large moonshining operations up and running and had been running for decades by the time Prohibition hit.
Huh.
And one of the centers here in Colorado actually was right up the hill from where I live, here in Golden, in a place called Golden Gate Canyon in Gilpin County. And just as a little trivia fact, when people would walk into the bars of Golden and Denver and they wanted local hooch, they would ask for Golden Moon.
All right. Was there anything else there, Liz?
Okay.
The last comment from Steve was around that Rumpelmans and Jägermeister shot. He renamed it Vomitmeister. Appropriate.
The Vomitmeister, hello.
You know, when we're young, our palates are not fully developed, and people drink a lot of different things, and that's fine. If it makes them happy, God bless them.
It's a culinary exploration. Yes, there you go.
You also drink the craziest stuff. Remember, I used to have guys coming in asking for mat shots. Which
God,
all the
that's
crap
so gross.
in
That's
the rubber.
so gross.
And they shoot it. I go, dudes, you know that's mostly like cranberry juice and water, all the stuff that over. It's not like I'm pouring, whiskey and vodka and tequila.
I thought that was called a toenail.
Oh my God.
That's appropriate too.
Liz, I'd never heard that, but I'm not going to forget that one. I remember doing mat shots as a bartender.
Wow.
And asking I remember the first time I did one, I asked myself why, and I don't think there was a second time.
Well, and speaking of which, Liz mentioned another spirit, Malort, which
Love Malort.
Now that
the
is
shot-worthy spirit.
It's what, Liz?
I said that's the only shot I will have.
Well, so Malort is actually, there are a whole bunch of spirits made throughout Europe that are based upon wormwoods. There's absinthe that's based upon grand wormwood. And then there's a family of spirits that in the trade is known as Genepe. And Genepe are spirits made from lesser wormwoods, but some of them are simple in that they only have one flavoring compound, and that is the wormwood. Some of them are complex. So Yazara in Spain, Chartreuse in France are two examples of complex Genepes. And then there's Malort, which is from Sweden. It's also known as Basque Brandvin, and it's a slightly sweetened or dulcified Genepe. Process is a little different, and of course in Chicago they love it. And for years it was actually made in Florida for the Chicago market. That's I think it's Jensen's Malort.
Jepson's
Malort. But from what I understand, they just moved production back to Chicago.
CH Distillery bought the brand and brought it back to Chicago. So now you can have basically what it tastes like is Aquanet hairspray. That's what it says.
I don't know if I'd go there, but I've never tasted Aquanet hairspray.
My mom used to spray it all over her head, and if I was anywhere in the area, and I was younger,
get a mouthful.
There was a bar in Chicago. I want to say it was called The Bear. That used to make a Malort soda. It was awesome. That's one of the coolest cocktails I've ever had. They would serve it in a 6-ounce glass bottle. With a cap. It was carbonated. It was a Malort soda. It was freaking amazing. It was a beautiful.
Wow.
You're not thinking of
Wow.
Grizzlies. Grizzlies? There used to be a bar called Grizzlies.
Might be
Sounds kinda
Grizzly.
Yeah, I don't know bear. That sounds like some Grizzlies would have done.
Sounds like Malort seltzer. I don't know.
Yeah, it was a Malort. There was other things in it. My guess is it was Malort, a little simple soda water, and I want to say there was another taste profile in there. But I don't remember what it was.
Sure, there was. Yes.
Would you stop?
I've never. I know it's a big thing. Anyone comes to visit Chicago, you give them a shot of Malort, and in a way, that's also treated kind of like, hey, stick your hand in this tiger's cage. That's kind of an initiation kind of thing.
Actually, I was with you when I had my first shot of Malort, Marty.
See?
Oh.
What was it, the matchbook?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That was my first shot.
But here's the thing: everybody has a different palate. And Malort, there are people that don't like the bitterness of wormwood, which is the essence of Malort.
I know.
There are people that don't like licorice. There are people that don't like whiskey.
No,
I know it's hard to believe, but
I know. I mean, I'm sure if I drank it more often, and actually, I think Paul Helko at Few made a Malort-esque spirit, and he had to take the name Malort off.
Yeah.
I think
Malort is trademarked.
Yeah.
And also, I think someone could fight that in a trademark battle, but why would you want to?
Not a big market you're talking about.
Yeah. Jack the Ripper, that's his name. Malort has its name. That's how I look at it.
It's not that. Come on, Marty.
There's no other Jack the Ripper. There's only one.
Yeah, but Malort's a good thing. It's not a bad thing.
I know. I'm giving it a hard time because that's what you do.
Well, and so remember, I'm kind of wormwood, friendly, if you will.
Yeah.
And, I make a couple of absinthes. I make a Genepe. And we grow about 5 varietals of Grand and Lesser Wormwoods at Fruition Farms in Larkspur.
Oh, wow.
So we're actually growing our own wormwood.
Is it a bush or a tree?
It's a bush.
Okay.
So it's the Artemisia family. So sagebrush is also part of the same family. There's about, depending on which botanical book you read, between 12 and 1,800 members of the family. There are 9 that are commonly used for alcohol beverage production. Most of them are various types of Genepes in Europe, and then of course there's Grand Wormwood that's used in absinthe.
Well, when you have that kind of when you start talking about Malort, it's time to wrap things up.
You've reached that part of the night.
Yeah, right. You've reached it.
Long time is usually just as the bar is about to close.
Well, it's whether you're talking Malort or you're talking a complex Genepe like Chartreuse.
No, that's different. There's a number of different wormwood spirits I actually love. I love Chartreuse. I love.
This is our Genepe.
Absinthe. And where does vermouth get its name but from wormwood?
Exactly.
I love vermouth.
Well, and one last comment on wormwood is that most American vermouths do not have wormwood in it.
Bastards.
Where Europe, by law, they have to have them in it.
Well, that's probably also too because they didn't have it because you couldn't have it for a while, and then.
And actually, strangely, that's not true. The reason that U.S. law is capped at 10 parts per million of thujone, which is the chemical in wormwood, is to allow vermouth production to continue in the U.S. But the reason that it stopped was because Americans didn't like the American palate at the time wasn't favorable towards that bitter note.
Really? I thought it was the whole kind of the same thing that hit marijuana that they made.
Turns out we were just babies.
Well, and you read that, and they did demonize absinthe because of the presence of thujone. But under the Safe Food Act of 1924, it's thujone free with less than 10 parts per million, and that was specifically put in to allow vermouth to be produced.
See, this is some of that deep absinthe knowledge he was talking about.
Deep.
Yeah. I hooked into one of those groups just before it became legal, like about a year and a half before it became legal, and I was bowled over by the depth of the conversation and the level of detail.
We are all serious booze geeks.
I gotta walk away from this.
Absinthe geeks and Star Wars geeks. I put them in the same league.
Hey, I fit that description.
Oh, both?
Jeez. Venn diagram.
Absinthe, whiskey, old stills, old distilling, Star Wars.
I was waiting for that to come through.
Old motorcycles.
Okay, well, guys, we are running. In fact, we're overtime now. A couple of real quick things. Thank you, Stephen. I hope you enjoy your personalized classes.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
So Lou will be sending everyone 6 copies, signed copies of the Masterclass. So
I can't wait to read it, Lou. I love your other book.
He's going to send those out to you.
Thank you.
Don't know when. And just now, something that a lot of folks don't know about Stephen is that he is persevered. I want to say survivor. I'll say persevered and battled cancer and been a victor. Dealt with cancer, and a couple other big guys in the industry right now is Chris Patino is out there. He's battling cancer as well, and our friend Steve Beal just went under the knife recently for pancreatic cancer. And my father passed away from cancer.
Mine as well.
A number of years, yeah. So cancer,
pancreatic.
I hate fucking cancer.
Yeah,
we both.
Right in the head. So there's a link down there. Chris Patino has created a T-shirt that says, "This T-shirt fights cancer." So
I have one.
Yeah, I did too. I bought one. Liz, I'll buy you one because Liz is broke. Liz has no money.
Ouch.
It's true. That's not even their house. She breaks into homes too.
It's just a green screen.
She can afford
the bus terminal. What?
But she can't afford an actual house.
Check out the link. It's down below.
Yeah, do a good thing.
And we're actually going to post that link on Golden Moon Distillery and Golden Moon Speakeasy social media. Blast that out. Anything anybody can do in the fight against cancer is a good thing to do. Yeah, my life was touched by cancer, but I'm doing great. There's a lot of people that aren't. And so if you feel in the giving mood this holiday season or throughout the year, any cancer charity, as long as it's a legitimate charity, is a good charity.
Right. I can, go after it, baby, and give to your wallet bleeds.
Can I say one last thing?
Yes, sir.
So we're still going through this COVID thing. And for all of you out there listening, please make an effort to go to your local restaurants or your local bars, your local breweries, your local distilleries. Spend money locally with your hospitality professionals. Get a cocktail to go, get a meal to go, get a meal to eat outside where it's safe.
Gift card.
Please wear a mask, but show your hospitality professionals some love because people are struggling right now.
And tip.
Yeah, tip them. Yeah.
Yeah. What the reindeer wrangler said.
My pizzas have been costing $50 because I tipped the poor guy.
Yeah.
He's probably actually doing pretty well, the delivery guys, but still, I'll tip him.
Tip them.
50%.
Out there busting their ass.
So thanks, everyone. Lizard, who do we have next week?
Well, next week we actually have a double.
Boing.
2 guests. Wow. Making it count for the last show of the year. We have Wilson Torres from Union Horse
Distillery.
And Jake Huckey from Starward.
Starward. A little Australian whiskey.
I was last year. I love their stuff.
Yeah, so we're going to have the two of them on. They do a podcast here in Chicago called Key in the Lake, and they're going to help us do a little year in review. So please join us. In the meantime, everyone, you have a very Merry Christmas. Happy Christmas if you're in England. They like to say Happy Christmas. Happy Hanukkah and Kwanzaa. I think
Which is over, but
Hanukkah's over, so yeah.
I hope Hanukkah was fantastic. It's a lot longer than Christmas, for God's sakes. So it should be.
Festivus is next week, right?
What? What is?
Festivus? The Festivus for the rest of us?
And, well, next week we'll talk to everybody and wish them a happy Hogmanay. Aye. All right. Well, thanks.
Stephen, thank you so much.
Thanks, Stephen.
Thank you all. I really appreciate. Everybody have a happy holiday season. Like I said, visit your neighborhood bars and restaurants, and everybody be well. Wear a mask.
Visit the distillery. Go in there, walk in, buy some product, support the distilleries. All right, kiddies. Happy holidays.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers.
There's a gangster.